Hello, those of you that don't know me now, I'm Sherilyn Simpson. If you haven't seen my very first video that I posted, today we are actually going to get to be in the garden. Video outtake number 2. So today we're actually going to be in the garden. For once, I'm not going to bore you just by talking to you all day long. So I'm going to go over the basics of transplanting some plants for you, just to demonstrate how to do it properly. I know it sounds actually kind of funny to say, how do you transplant a plant? You take it in one pot and put it in another. It's not necessarily the case. There is a process. Every plant is treated differently, and how they are transplanted, and like what medium of soil that they need to be in, and whatnot. So I have different pots here for you. So there's different ways of why we transplant plants in general. It could be flowers, it could be vegetables, it can even be fruit trees. I've learned a certain way of doing things over the years that has seemed to work for me. You kind of find a way that works for you, but just in general, this is kind of just the basic way of doing things. So we're going to go to the garden and party a little bit with solo cups. So today I wanted to bring, like I said, a variety of pots for you. So solo cups is a cheap way to start your seeds. You can get, 50 of them in a package. Is a bunch of these, pretty cheap. And I just poke a hole in the bottom of them. And one day I could show you all, but literally I just heat a screwdriver and just melt the bottom of it and poke a hole. But anyways, I will get usually 2 to 3 years of growing seeds out of these, no problem. And then, before they start cracking, and then they're no good and I just have to throw them away. But I don't know, I've had these cups for a few years now and they're still working great. I have no issues with them. I know a lot of people that use them, and they're amazing. Another one is, and I'm not, they're a great company. I just, they're not, being any kind of sponsored or anything like that, but they're out of Tulsa. If you ever are in Tulsa, I go to the Riddle Plant Farm. It's a good place. Anyways, speaking of which, these are pots that I've accumulated from different purchases. I have a Miracle Grow pot, but some of these pots are pretty durable and pretty sturdy. I've used them again for several years. They already got holes in the bottom of them, and they're pretty good. Now, some of these farms, or even Walmart, actually accumulated these, where you can pick up these trays and you could put, as a matter of fact, I use my solo cups in these, just to hold them in place so they don't fall over on your racks and whatnot, and they're easy to carry outside when you're needing to harden off your seedlings. So when you plant your seedlings, I usually start about mid-February, February into March. I usually start about that time frame, and that way they are ready to go to be transplanted out in your garden. Now I do have some seedlings. Loofahs are a big one that I have to start indoors in January. They require such a long growing season. Pumpkins and your big squashes, Choctaw squash is another big one that I grow a lot, that require a substantial growing season because they require putting a large amount of fruits and a lot of times it's quite a bit of fruits on that vine, so they require an extensive growing season. I have, and I apologize, this is getting loud. Now, my mother-in-law has purchased these. These are kind of like coconut pots is the best way to explain them. They have that outer coconut hair feeling, or they call them the core pots. You can use those. However, I have issues with them just because I have to keep them wet all the time, and a lot of my plants don't do well staying wet at their root ball too long, or they just start having disease issues and whatnot. So, and it's just hard to keep the water at a consistent rate for those plants. But teach their own. You'll find kind of what you like. Another one is those disposable, they're kind of pots that you could put it, they say you could put them in the ground with your plant. Again, I have issues with those because they seem to take forever to break down in my soil, and it just causes problems. Not to say they're horrible. They're just kind of like these coconut pots. They have a tendency to dry out very easily, and you have to keep them wet, which ends up keeping your root ball too wet, and then you become having some issues with your plants. Big one is I spoke of before, blight on your tomatoes. They don't handle super wet soil for very long, or they'll start getting diseases and pests on them. So just kind of do your research on what works for you and whatnot. So another pot that I can't say enough of, this is a pot that I ended up from Lowe's. So again, this is not a company that I know much about, but I have an azalea plant that I need to transplant into a bigger pot. So when I get some of my beds ready, which I have these half-cut barrels, I've already got them prepared, putting logs in them. So that's my base layer. Anytime I have something big and bulky like this that I have to put soil in, I will line them first with logs, and then I'll add my soil on top of that. Again, you can add leaves, grass clippings on top of those logs, but currently right now I don't have that right now, and I just working with what I have. So this is kind of my setup when I'm doing this. A lot of times I will lay out a tarp out on the grass and mix up the soil to add to my flower beds or my vegetable beds when I'm adding a lot at a time. And yes, I do purchase, you know, what I need. I don't have access to a company that will load my truck up with soil, so I kind of do a little bit at a time. This is just the cheapest way that I can do it for what I have around here. So currently this is my mixture, and whenever I do soil mixes, I don't just purchase a bag from the store. I actually purchase several different varieties of bags to mix them together. It's again generally the easiest and cheapest way of doing this in my setup here. So I highly recommend, if you know, I know Tulsa has a recycle center that they supposedly recycle compost, and they give out soil for free. I know in Oklahoma City they have a Minic soil or compost facility that you can purchase some loads of soil or compost in. That is very, very good. I've heard good reviews on that. You can also look on Facebook and find places, horse farms, that will have soil available or compost available to purchase. A lot of times too, they will maybe even offer it for free. Just be careful. You just want to make sure it's well broken down and it's not still running hot, meaning when the compost process happens, your compost pile can really heat up to a couple hundred degrees and can burn your plants. Fresh manure honestly could burn your plants too, because it's going through that process of breaking down, and you don't want to kill your plants that way. So the couple of varieties of soil that I have here, and I'll show you pictures. I just wanted to show you kind of what the soil looks like. So this is a general potting soil, is what they say. This is kind of what it looks like. It just has your basic soil consistency there. However, it does have chunky chips in there that are still in the process of breaking down. You just don't want large sticks in here. You know, this is kind of like a wood chip, and it's in the process of breaking down. So my next one that I add is called peat moss. Peat moss is very good to add nitrogen to your soil. It can be acidic, so you got to be careful not to add too much, but it will hold moisture very, very well. This is my bucket that I'm mixing everything in. And my last bag that I have here is cow manure. You can use cow manure, you can use, there's mushroom compost that Lowe's sells. This is really cheap stuff. However, you don't want to just use this. This does have sticks in it. And when you're watering this, it really gets clumpy and it feels like clay a lot of times. So the whole point of having this mixture is that it aerates your roots, but you are adding enough nutrients to your soil. So I have my 3 in here, and with the peat moss, when you're mixing it, you got to really get those clumps out because they put them in the bags so tightly. And so I'll just put some in here and mix it up. Now, one thing I don't have in here that I usually put in here, and I just didn't get at the time because they didn't have it, is perlite. And perlite I will show you a picture of. I have a lot of it in my gardens because over the years I've added. Now, every once in a while you'll find a rock. That's what I got. So I try to clear that out of my garden. But yeah, stick your hand in here. Don't be afraid to get dirty, or you can use a shovel. But as much as I add in here, I just use my hand. And you want it really mixed in very good. And once I get that done, I will add it to my barrels here. However, what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you starting from the ground up by transplanting some of these little pots for you. transplanting at least some of these is, as you can see, the pots are very short. There's not a whole lot of room for that plant to grow. So I've had these plants actually in the soil for a couple weeks now, and I feel like it's time to transplant them because they're not flourishing very well and whatnot. As a matter of fact, you could probably, transplant them because they have passed their first leaf stage. Their first leaf stage is what they call the cotyledon leaves, and they are the baby leaves that first emerge out of the soil. But once they get their true leaves coming out, you're welcome to transplant them. However, I feel like they're still a little weak, and I think they need a little boost in getting transplanted. So that would be a reason why you would want to transplant from another planter to another planter. So what I do, and these do tear apart very easy. I got this Pro Mix from Walmart. Again, nothing's sponsored here. The reason I like Pro Mix a lot is this is generally just like the soil I just mixed over there. So this soil has, your peat moss. It's very fluffy. It has good aeration in there, and it holds water really well. Plus, it's already infused with some nutrients in there to allow the plant to flourish pretty well. So, once I put soil in my cup here, I'll fill it about 3/4 full, and then I will take my plant that I'm transplanting, and I'm not going to pull from the stem itself, especially these squashes and these pumpkins, those type of stems. They break very, very, very easily, and so you want to be very gentle with them. So I'll squeeze it just enough to loosen it up, and then I will scoop it out with my hand. Just literally like pick it up out of the pot itself. So I try not to expose the roots as much as I have to, because these plants will go through what we call a transplant shock. And so once they get in these pots, a lot of times they will act like they're wilted and they're going to die, and they're not. So you just got to be patient with it. And then I'll put it in the pot, take some of that soil, and put it around it. Now these plants, this type of plant, you're only going to go as high as what the soil line originally was on the stem. You don't want to go too high up on the stem because that will kill the plant. I don't just push down too hard. I'm just pushing down enough to make sure it's snug in its new home. And that's what it looks like. And then once I'm done here, I will give it some water. I'll soak it pretty good. You want to keep the soil pretty moist until it's pretty established, and then you just monitor as it goes to make sure the plant has enough moisture in the pot. Again, you got to be careful not to overwater because some of these plants do not like their roots wet too long, and they will develop diseases and whatnot. So my next pot, I'm going to use this one that I have. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fill it about 3/4 full. You don't want it too low into the pot because then it won't get the adequate sun that it's supposed to get. So kind of pack it in there. And I didn't mention on the last one, and I don't have it right now, but I will here in a minute, but I'll put saturate that soil enough for the plant to get the moisture it needs, and it's not inconsistent watering throughout the soil. And I will demonstrate that when we get to the bigger barrels. So again, I'm about 3/4 full there. I'm squeezing my pot, and then I tip it over and I'm scooping it out, and I'm being as gentle as I can with it, and then I just lay it in my new pot. And just because you just transplanted out of that old soil doesn't mean you have to throw away the old soil. I still use it. That's one thing you do not ever throw away is your soil. Unless there is some kind of disease that you're trying to fight, then yeah, I would throw it away. But these are healthy, still healthy plants. I'm not going to throw my soil away. So soil is way too expensive these days. And then I just lightly push it down, just enough to make sure, it helps sturdy the plant more and encourages the roots to get established better to keep the plants sturdy and safe. So there you have it. Now, I am transplanting some, I got some tomato plants, and a lot of times my tomato plants, I grow probably, it could be many of them in a pot to, just a few, but a lot of times I have to separate them. So I'll show you how to do that too. See, I just mixed the new soil with the old soil. I just didn't have a good germination out of that pot, and just because I didn't have good germination doesn't mean the soil is necessarily bad. You just sometimes run into that problem where your seeds don't germinate very well. So in this instance, the soil is actually kind of moist, and so you can see it's holding together, but it's not holding together like you're holding clay. It does crumble a little bit when you mess with it. So that's about the consistency you want your soil to be when you're transplanting. So I'm going to get a couple of these, filled a little bit here. The wind's trying to pick up a little bit, so it's making it a little difficult, but we can work with it. So I'll get them in there, push down the soil a little bit. So you want air in your soil, but you don't want them too airy, because the roots do require some oxygen to them. However, you don't want them fully exposed. Okay. So I'm going to pull this apart. That is one benefit of these pots. You can pull them apart. Now, as you can see, I have several in here. Now, as I'm going to transplant these, I am going to look to see which ones I would want to keep and which ones I probably want to get rid of. I know that is intimidating by some people. It took me a while to recognize that. But when you get seedlings like this and you have ones that are little and still struggling to grow, or they're damaged, this one's a little bit damaged there. This one has a stem that's damaged. I can't pull it out. Those are the ones you want to get rid of, because those are the ones that will, they'll have a harder time to grow, and they're most likely to not produce very well for you in the long run. So this one I'm probably going to get rid of. This one, This one looks good, even though the stem looks a little damaged, but it's actually one of the better ones. So before I pull it out, I'll pull out, and there again, I probably shouldn't have pulled them out. I usually cut them, but since we're transplanting, it's not going to be as big a deal. So you'll squeeze it now that we're in the process of transplanting, and you'll feel it kind of break a little bit, and that's how you know that you're loose. Now, I'm not going to pull, I almost did it, but I'm not going to pull by the stems because you don't want to break the stems. But tomato stems are very durable. They could still break, but you know, they're not as easy to break as say as like a zucchini or any of your squash plants. So when I get to my first pot here, I'm going to grab by the stems and tease them apart. My wind is just picking up. You don't want to just rip them apart because that's when you start breaking your roots. But you'll just tease them apart. I'll just put them in the pot. Ideally, when I'm transplanting tomatoes, I try to only get one plant per pot because I want them to actually grow now. So tomatoes, the ideal way of planting tomatoes is a little different than what we just planted here. The tomatoes can be buried a whole lot deeper because over time they have little hairs on their stems, and I am not sure if you're going to see that very well, but they're fuzzy little hairs on their stem there. Those little hairs will turn into roots. So to make the plant successful in growing and able to get extra nutrients, you can plant all the way up to here. And it sounds silly, but it works very well. And if you don't have space to grow into your garden, over time when these get bigger, you can plant them sideways and allow the roots established along the stem there. So I'm digging down deep in my cup here because I want to get it deep down in there, but I also don't want it to be all the way to the bottom. But the reason I'm transplanting these in pots right now is these are actually going to my mother-in-law's house, so I'm trying to get these established enough that they can go down there and they're not going to be super stressed out. These will get transplanted a few times before actually going to their new home. So, as you saw, the stem was very long. Now it's very short because I buried it to the ground. I'm kind of running out of the soil over here, so I'm going to do the best I can with the wind. So bear with me for a second. Gotta love Oklahoma wind. Seems like here lately we've had sustained over 40 miles an hour. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Okay, so since I'm limited on pots right now, I'm just going to plant these and then I'll transplant one of these out. But I just want to at least show you. Now there is question about some of these plants tomatoes, I'm sorry, about the purple stem. Most of your varieties, I would say, I agree with people. They say it's a nutrient deficiency. However, these are Cherokee purples. Cherokee purples, they are purple vining plants. So these, the stem is purple. Typically your tomatoes, the stems are green. But this variety is known to have a purple stem. So I want to make that clear before somebody makes a comment that I have sick plants. So just like that. Now these plants I will most likely take into the house because I have a lighting system for these plants. The light is kind of a light that the spectrum is made for plants. It's not just a regular light. And I will show you a picture of that. So bear with me right now. It is pretty windy today. We are under a chance of severe weather, pretty bad chance of tornadoes and whatnot. So I am trying to take this opportunity to go over this. This is on a different day than when this was filmed. However, I'm just showing you how I kind of do the process of mixing. Again, I usually lay out a tarp and mix all the contents together, but that's usually if I have multiple bags of each types of soil. Since I'm only filling barrels that's next to the house and maybe some containers, I am just going to mix in these mineral tubs that you can purchase. I got these off of Facebook Marketplace from previous cattle owners that have used them for their herds. They go for $5 to $10, nothing too extravagant. If you use these containers for growing any kind of crop in them or flowers, you do want to drill holes kind of semi at the bottom, about an inch from the bottom, just so you'll have drainage and whatnot. So you could see even on that day how our wind typically is, and it can be kind of frustrating to work with. So just bear with me. currently I have an azalea plant. I kind of got the process started already on this plant, transplanting it. I purchased this plant from Lowe's for $10. I was super lucky and super excited because currently right now the azaleas are in full bloom. If you've ever been to the Muskogee Festival, that is the place to go for azaleas. They are gorgeous when they bloom. They don't just bloom one here, one there. They turn the whole bush that color. So I got this one for reasonably cheap, and so I was super excited. As I stated in the last video, my grandmother, she was the azalea queen. I've always wanted to have an azalea that I can plant for her. However, at Lowe's, they're just, for me, they're just too pricey and whatnot. So I found one real reasonable. They've been some reason on clearance here lately at Lowe's, so I've been grabbing them as much as I can. So what I do is I get a peat moss mix. I'll put it in the pot itself. Before I even go the step of transplanting the plant, I make sure that peat moss is soaked. I'm talking about, this is the only instance that I'm aware of that they want it as wet as possible. You don't want any dry spots in your peat moss. You'll put for the root ball itself, you want the pot double its size when you're transplanting it, so it has room to establish. I will leave this plant in here probably for at least a year before I'll throw them in the ground. I found success growing it that way. In my opinion, my fruit trees are the same way. I feel like they get a lot more well established when they're in pots because it makes me water them. These azaleas, you've got to keep the soil moist. They cannot dry out or they'll just die. And once they start to die, there's no saving them. So it's just ideal to do that. Now, I'm going to show you here. So I've started here. It was originally in this pot, and so it was about time for it to go into a new pot. So you can see I have double-sized the pot. I fill it up initially about 3/4 of the way full. However, when you get it wet, it's going to compact down a little bit and whatnot. So I'm probably going to add some more soil and some more water to this. So the soil now is saturated with water. So now it's time to put my plant in. And we're going to smash it in there kind of good, but you want to get it in there to where your plant is just below the pot rim. Because what you're going to do is come slightly above the soil level here, because you're going to cover all this. And so you want it to be in there pretty good, just below the rim here of the pot. So now I have the plant into the ground. As you can see, I covered it up, the original root ball, and as of right now, it's right there at the rim. However, I'm about to add some more water. And I am soaking it several times. Try not to let the peat moss and all that come right out, but it's going to get soaked really well. So I apologize if it's pretty loud. I'm going to try to do this as best I can with this wind and my unit. However, I just planted some watermelon, some Choctaw squash, and what I did is soak the soil like I did the azalea. Once I got the soil in there, and then after that I dug my hole. Just used my hand to go a few fingers deep, and took the plant out of the pot. I teased the roots. I added a synthetic fertilizer. It's a 13-13-13 fertilizer I just got like from Tractor Supply. I put it in the hole, mix it in the hole a little bit so the plant isn't directly on top of the fertilizer, and then I plugged the fertilizer into the hole and then piled the soil on top of it. I am going to go through with these and get these damaged ones off. I can probably just pinch it off, or I'll just probably just take nippers just so I don't break that stem. And I also, these ones that have these rough splitting stems, I'll probably just bury those into the soil. So to prepare my spot for planting in the actual garden, I will dig a hole. After I pull my weeds out, I'll fluff up the soil and then dig my hole. I got that ahead of myself. So I will grab some fertilizer. Again, this is just the same that I use in my vegetable garden. I just threw some in a bucket. I just get a handful. I'll toss it into my ground, and then I'll use my hand to kind of fluff it around. And then I will make sure my hole is ready. So this plant is called Blue Moon Phlox. It's a type of tall phlox. This stuff is gorgeous. I have a magenta variety. That was one of my grandmother's. I saw this at Lowe's, and it was not very expensive. It's a perennial. It will come back every spring, and it blooms for months during the growing season. So as of right now, I will smush it out of the pot, turn it over. You can see the roots have kind of grown through the pot. I'll pull them, it won't hurt them, and then I'll pull it out. Now this is a prime example of a plant being root bound. So what you'll do is I'll take my fingers most of the time and just break up those roots. Again, it's not going to hurt them. It actually will benefit them to encourage them to spread out. And I'll do the same for the top. Just take my fingers, my thumb, and just break it up. Okay? And then I'll set it into the ground. And then I'll put the soil over it. And in this instance, I'll try to mound it. I'm not going to go too excessive above the soil level, the original soil level. Kind of snug it in there. I'm not pushing too hard, but I'll have a trench. That trench is to encourage the roots to come out away from the plant, so the plant will get stronger and gets more stabilized and not fall over like this. You can get a tomato cage, which I will, and I'll put around it. Cages, just the simple ones, really are only good for situations like this. Those indeterminate tomatoes are not very good for these. They're not tall enough, but they work wonders with flowers. Be very gentle, especially with these flowers, so you don't break the stem or damage the actual flower itself. Just snug it in there really good. With these windy days, this will support it really well and it won't hurt your flowers. And then I will water it in. And for about a week, I will come out here every day to water, especially if it gets hot. So I'll water it every day. It doesn't matter the time of day, just as long as it gets water. And I'll do the same for the azalea plant. So I've got another plant. I could show you again how to plant it and my process. In here I do have some 4 o'clocks. That's what that is. They come back every year by seed. So you got to pay attention what you have already in your bed if you don't want to get rid of it. So this right here is an apple juice container. So this bed typically is neglected a lot of times. So to help with watering, I will fill this container up and it will help keep the soil moist and the plants hydrated. So this is what you call Blue by You Sylvia. Again, I got this from Lowe's. It is a perennial, so it will come back every year. I got this because the bees love them, and I wanted to be able to put this in my garden for beneficial insects. Another issue I run into over here, and why you see pellets over here, is this is close to my goats. And I don't want my goats to eat these. And part of it is not just because I don't want them to eat my flowers, because that's the majority of it. It's my mistakes. However, sunflower varieties are not ideal for livestock or any animal as it is. Some plants are toxic to animals, so you gotta be careful them having access to your plants. So I'll smush it. This one is another one. It's probably going to be root bound. Just pull the roots off. And there you go. Sometimes you really got to get aggressive. It's not going to hurt the plant. I always do it over the flower bed just so you don't get soil everywhere. I'm smushing it down. Always want to pick your leaves up because you don't want to bury them into the soil. Most of your flowering plants are usually ready to transplant when you bring them home, so you don't want to keep them in pots too long. If you decide you want to keep them in a pot, you want to double the size of the pot. And then again, I will water it. Finally get some rain. There has been reported of some tornadoes on the ground. Welcome to Oklahoma, people. That rain feels good though.
Right here with this storm, and so this is headed up to Stratford, Hart, there's your debris, southwest of Rock, now crossing into Pontotoc County, again moving into western Pontotoc.
People think I'm crazy, but I love this storm.
Up to the north here.
This is awesome. I got drenched.
It's going to be northeast of Salford, the final way. Salford, now you're in yet another tornado warning that was just issued just seconds ago for this cell that we have.